What if the greatest secrets of humanity are not buried in the sands of Egypt or hidden beneath lost temples, but flowing right now through the blood of millions? Scripture tells us in Genesis that Cush, the father of Ethiopia, gave rise to mighty nations. But modern science has stumbled onto something even more startling. In the DNA of Ethiopians, researchers have found evidence of ghost peoples, entire branches of humanity that left no bones, no tools, no ruins, only traces written into living cells. Could these be echoes of tribes the Bible only hints at, shadows of stories we thought were myth? Ethiopia's genetic code doesn't just tell us where we came from. It forces us to ask if we've misunderstood the very foundations of human history. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, we're going to uncover why Ethiopian DNA may hold the forbidden chapter of humanity's story and why it could change the way you see the Bible forever. Don't miss what comes next. Ethiopia, the cradle and the crossroads. Imagine standing on the rocky soil of the Afar Depression, where the bones of Lucy, our oldest known ancestor, were uncovered. The sun blazes down the land, looks desolate, yet beneath this dust lies a living library of human origins. Science calls Ethiopia the birthplace of humanity, but the Bible called it something else long before. Genesis names Cush, son of Ham, as the father of nations. The land of Cush, often linked with ancient Ethiopia, becomes a thread woven through the biblical story, from Nimrod the mighty hunter to prophecies in Isaiah and Zephaniah. Modern geneticists tell us that Ethiopia did not remain a sealed-off cradle, but became a crossroads where populations mingled for thousands of years. Every Ethiopian today carries fragments of lost peoples, ghost populations, who left no bones, no monuments, only genetic echoes. These discoveries confirm Ethiopia as more than a point of origin. It is a hub where humanity kept returning. The question is why? Why this land? Why this bloodline? Some scholars see only migration patterns, but for those of faith, it suggests a deeper orchestration. Ethiopia chosen to preserve secrets hidden from the rest of the world. Stay with me, because the story of these ghost populations will challenge how we think about both science and scripture. Ghost populations and hidden tribes. Scripture often hints at peoples whose presence is mysterious. The Rephaim, the Anakim, even the Nephilim figures who stride through the Old Testament like shadows before vanishing into silence. Archaeology has little to say about them, and yet Ethiopia's DNA carries the same kind of puzzle. Scientists have found that Ethiopians inherit up to 7% of their ancestry from a human lineage entirely unknown to us. These were not Neanderthals or Denisovans groups already identified in Eurasia. This was something else, a population that split from our own 500,000 years ago, vanished, and then reappeared in Ethiopian bloodlines. Prophetically, this raises a haunting question. Could these hidden branches of humanity echo those shadowy peoples mentioned in Scripture, beings who stood on the boundary between history and myth? The Bible never names Ethiopia as their dwelling place, but it does name Cush as the father of nations. What if those nations included groups the modern world has lost? Some suggest this is speculation. Others see it as symbolism for the mystery of God's creation, larger and more complex than our limited records. Either way, the evidence is undeniable. Ethiopians carry within their cells a story untold, a reminder that not every chapter of human history is visible in the dirt. And here lies the cliffhanger. If these ghost peoples left no ruins, no texts, only whispers in the blood, then who were they? And why does their memory survive here in this land so closely tied to Scripture? To explore that, we must turn not just to bones and blood, but to the words that live on in languages older than time. Languages older than time. When we open the book of Genesis, we find the story of Babel, where humanity's one language was scattered into many. For most of us, that story feels distant until we look to Ethiopia. Linguists have long puzzled over the Semitic languages of Ethiopia, such as Amharic and Guraj. Unlike Arabic, which spread through conquest, these languages appear to have evolved in isolation, carrying an older form of Semitic speech that predates much of what we know. Historical records and genetic studies converge around 3,000 years ago. A wave of Eurasian migrants entered Ethiopia, leaving behind not only their DNA, but also their words. The two traveled together, creating a living fossil of an ancient migration invisible to archaeology. This makes Ethiopia a unique window into a forgotten chapter of human history. The languages preserved there are not simply dialects, they are monuments. Just as carved stone testifies to ancient kingdoms, words embedded in everyday speech testify to a migration older than recorded history. For a biblical audience, this echoes the dispersal from Babel, a reminder that God scattered languages for His purpose, and that some were hidden in places we least expect. And here lies the mystery. Why would Ethiopia, thousands of miles from Mesopotamia, preserve these traces more faithfully than many lands closer to Babel's plain? Perhaps the answer lies not in geography, but in destiny. The covenant people of Ethiopia. Think of the story of the Queen of Sheba visiting Solomon in Jerusalem, bringing treasures and questions to Israel's wisest king. That moment, remembered in 1 Kings 10, has lived on for millennia in Ethiopian tradition. But tradition alone is not the only witness. Geneticists studying the Beta Israel, the Jewish community of Ethiopia, found something remarkable. Their DNA is undeniably Ethiopian, but within it lie markers that connect them to ancient Middle Eastern populations, not modern ones. These markers predate the Babylonian exile and even the Roman destruction of the temple. When I first read this, it felt like opening a time capsule. The Beta Israel do not just claim a connection to Israel. Their very blood carries it. And beyond DNA, their religious practices echo Judaism as it was 2,000 years ago. Temple-era rituals, pre-Talmudic laws, customs archaeologists knew only from texts. Imagine standing in a small Ethiopian village and watching people light Sabbath fires in ways that mirror rituals of ancient priests. It is like watching history breathe again. For people of faith, this is more than anthropology. It is a reminder that God's covenants endure even at the edges of the world. But the story does not end there. Across Ethiopia, Christian and Muslim populations also carry traces of migrations and exchanges hidden for centuries. Their DNA tells of ancient convergences, as though Ethiopia itself was chosen to preserve not just one covenant, but the memory of many. Which raises the deeper question: if every community here carries fragments of forgotten peoples, what happens when we look beyond religion to the great empires that once drew nations into Ethiopia's orbit? Empires and exchanges. Picture the bustling ports of the Red Sea 3,000 years ago. Ships heavy with frankincense and myrrh depart Ethiopia's highlands, their sails catching the same winds that carried caravans of stories across the ancient world. While merchants exchange spices and silk, something deeper was also exchanged: bloodlines. Genetic studies reveal Ethiopia holds DNA layers like geological strata. At the foundation lies a massive wave of Eurasian ancestry dating back 3 millennia, the very age of the Aksumite kingdom that controlled trade between Rome, India, and Arabia. This is not speculation, it is written in history. Ethiopia's incense made its way into the Temple of Jerusalem. Myrrh from its valleys was laid at the feet of the infant Christ. Yet those same trade routes also brought Greek scholars, Indian craftsmen, and Arabian settlers. They merged, not replaced, creating the Aksumite Empire's foundation. When researchers study Ethiopian DNA today, they find markers from Greece, Persia, even India, evidence of exchanges the archaeological record barely hints at. It is a breathtaking reminder the gifts brought to Christ by wise men from the East were more than symbolic. They were part of a vast web of exchange in which Ethiopia stood as a hub. The stones of Lalabella's rock churches and the obelisks of Aksum testify to this fusion of peoples and skills. But the DNA testifies to something even greater, that Ethiopia was not just trading goods, but absorbing civilizations. And in absorbing them, Ethiopia became something unique, a living crossroad where human history converged. Yet the story does not stop with merchants and empires. It continues in the flesh itself, in adaptations that made Ethiopians a people prepared for survival against challenges that would devastate others. A living laboratory of human survival. The prophet Isaiah once wrote of a remnant that would endure even when nations collapsed. Ethiopia may be one of the clearest earthly reflections of that promise. Scientists have discovered that Ethiopian populations carry unique genetic adaptations found nowhere else on Earth. Highlanders thrive at altitudes where oxygen is 40% thinner, yet they do not suffer the illnesses that plague other mountain peoples. Their bodies did not enlarge lungs like the Andean peoples or increase red blood cells like Tibetans. Instead, they evolved a distinct solution genes that make their cells themselves more efficient at carrying oxygen. The mysteries deepen with disease resistance. Ethiopians carry a variant of the APOL gene that shields against sleeping sickness, a disease that rendered vast regions of Africa uninhabitable. In most populations, this variant raises the risk of kidney disease. But Ethiopians carry a second mutation that cancels out the danger. Two perfectly matched changes, almost as if orchestrated. Some see this as mere chance. Others suggest it reflects providence, a divine preparation of a people meant to endure. Even in recent history, these adaptations show their strength. During the COVID-19 pandemic, researchers noted that certain Ethiopian groups displayed remarkable resistance to severe illness. Ancient mutations in the ACE2 receptor, the very gateway the virus uses, seem to have provided unexpected protection. Science sees adaptation. Faith may see preservation. Ethiopia, it seems, became not just a cradle, but a laboratory of survival, prepared for epidemics and trials long before they arrived. But what if survival is not the only mystery? What if within these same bloodlines lies the secret to creativity, language, and even new forms of human thought? Consciousness, creativity, and the future. When I think of Ethiopia, I don't just picture ancient ruins or genetic charts. I think of the songs. Ethiopian music, with its haunting scales and rhythms, feels both ancient and otherworldly. And now, scientists tell us there may be a reason. Ethiopian DNA carries unusual variants linked to neurotransmitter production variants that seem to correlate with stronger language acquisition, sharper pattern recognition, even musical ability. Imagine that entire communities where creativity itself may be encoded into their very being. This is not to say Ethiopians are superhuman. Every people carries God-given gifts. But Ethiopia's long history of genetic mingling created combinations no other nation possesses. It is as if thousands of years of encounters, traders, exiles, pilgrims wove together not only survival, but also a spark of something more, consciousness shaped by diversity. Some see this purely as science. Others, reflecting on Scripture, wonder if it points to God's design, that in Ethiopia we glimpse a living parable of what humanity is meant to become, a tapestry of many strands bound together. For me, it raises a deeply personal question. If 3,000 years of convergence created such resilience and creativity in Ethiopia, what might the next 3,000 years bring for the world as our bloodlines continue to intertwine? Will humanity as a whole carry the best of every people, as the prophet Zechariah envisioned when all nations stream toward the Lord? Or will we forget the lessons hidden in Ethiopia's living library? This is where the story turns from past to future, from evidence to hope. And it invites us to listen carefully, because Ethiopia may not only preserve humanity's oldest chapters, it may also be hinting at the next one. In the end, Ethiopia's story is more than a scientific marvel or a historical puzzle. It is a reminder that God weaves his purposes not only in scrolls of parchment or tablets of stone, but in the very flesh and blood of humanity. Here in one land, we see the echoes of forgotten peoples, the survival of covenant traditions, and the astonishing resilience of life shaped across ages. Ethiopia whispers that our past is not as simple as we thought, and perhaps our future holds mysteries even greater. For you and me, this is not just about DNA. It is about identity and purpose. In a world where so many feel disconnected or uncertain about who they are, the Ethiopian story reminds us that every lineage carries value. Every life is part of a design larger than we can imagine. If God could preserve such wonders in one people, how much more might he be preserving hidden treasures within your own life? So I leave you with this question. If Ethiopia is where humanity keeps becoming, then what is God preparing in us today? And what chapters of his plan are still waiting to be revealed? Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this exploration stirred something in your heart, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone searching for truth, and subscribe so you won't miss the mysteries still unfolding. Until we meet again, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his wisdom guide you into the hidden things yet to come.